The door slammed behind him. My heart skipped a beat. He stepped closer. My father-in-law, and there was a force in his gaze I had never seen before. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, steady, almost dangerous. My body froze, caught between fear and an unspoken, forbidden curiosity. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I could hear my husband somewhere down the hall, laughing, oblivious, but that sound felt miles away. I wanted to step back, to run, but something rooted me to the floor. He reached out, not aggressively, but with an authority I couldn't ignore, and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, yet I couldn't look away. The tension was unbearable, raw. Seconds stretched into lifetimes, every heartbeat echoing in my ears. Then he leaned closer, his words just a whisper. "I can't let this continue, but I also can't stay away." At that moment, everything changed. Everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and control shattered, and I realized that the safe, predictable life I had clung to was gone forever. "Hi, my name is Jane, and I never imagined my life could tilt so completely in a single, quiet moment. I always believed in stability, in the safety of routine, in the unshakable trust that comes with marriage. My husband, he seemed harmless, gentle, quiet, dependable, maybe too gentle, but I never thought that would leave a void I didn't even know existed. A void that someone else could notice, someone else could step into. I want you to understand, it wasn't about looking for danger or excitement. It was subtle, a glance that lingered too long, a touch that seemed innocent yet sent shivers I couldn't ignore. And the last person I expected was my father-in-law. Strong, commanding, magnetic in a way that made it impossible to forget him once he entered a room. I used to think he was just intimidating, a presence that demanded respect. But that night, he was different, not a figure of authority, not a man of my husband's household, but something closer, something sharper that reached past the lines I had drawn for myself. It all started as a single, fleeting moment. One glance, one brush of a hand, and I didn't know then how far it would go, how much it would unravel the life I thought I controlled. And yet, I was powerless to stop it. That night, everything shifted, and it all begins with a choice, even when you don't realize it's a choice at the time. I had been married for 4 years, 4 years of quiet predictability, of small smiles and careful compromises. My husband, he loved me, I think. But there was a fragility about him that made me feel unprotected, almost invisible in moments I wanted to feel seen. He was kind, yes, but timid. Too timid for the storm I didn't yet know was coming. My father-in-law, on the other hand, was everything my husband wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence filled any room without effort. And when he smiled, it wasn't just warmth. It was attention, sharp and deliberate, as if he could see through the cracks in your soul. I had noticed it from the beginning, the way he looked at me, innocent, protective, or something I couldn't name, something forbidden that made me shiver in ways I tried to ignore. The early days were subtle, a hand lingering too long on the small of my back at family gatherings, a glance that caught me in the kitchen when no one else was around. Every time, my mind raced with questions I didn't dare voice. Why does he look at me like that? Am I imagining it? I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew. I felt the undercurrent, the tension, the electricity between what was proper and what was inevitable. And then there were the little moments at home. Conversations that began casual but lingered longer than they should have. Advice that felt personal, too personal, as if he were peeling back layers of me I didn't know were visible. Each encounter left me with a racing heart, a guilt I couldn't pinpoint, and a curiosity I was powerless to resist. I felt trapped between fear and fascination, and every time he was near, the room seemed to shrink and the air thickened around us. I knew there were lines I should never cross. I knew the world would never forgive what my heart was already drawn to. But something in his presence commanded me. And that night, The night everything changed. Those walls I had built around myself crumbled in ways I could neither anticipate nor escape. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself. A shared cup of tea in the living room. A glance that lasted a heartbeat too long. His presence was magnetic, drawing me in without words, without consent from my reason. And each time I felt the rush of danger in simply being near him. One evening, after my husband had gone out of town, he appeared at the doorway. "I thought I'd check on you," he said, but there was something in his tone that made the air between us tremble. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was harmless. Yet when he stepped closer, brushing past me to fix the blanket on the couch, I felt a spark I couldn't name, a pull I couldn't resist. My hands were trembling, and I wondered if he noticed. Of course he did. Days blurred into weeks. Each encounter was a test, each smile, each fleeting touch, a silent challenge. I began to anticipate his presence, my heart beating faster whenever I heard the door open. The guilt and thrill coiled inside me like a living thing, whispering that I was crossing lines I couldn't uncross. And yet, I kept returning to him, compelled, entranced. There were moments of danger, too. One afternoon, my husband called unexpectedly, and we froze, caught in the charged tension of proximity. He gave me a look, a warning, a promise, and I nodded silently, my pulse hammering. I would never forget that glance. It lingered long after he had gone, etched into my mind, a reminder of the forbidden pull between us. Every family gathering became a battlefield of control and temptation. I watched him across the room, strong and confident, as my husband struggled to hold my attention. And in those moments, I saw the contrast so starkly that it made me feel guilty, ashamed, and alive all at once. I began to realize the dangerous truth. I was addicted to the tension, to the way he made me feel, and there was no turning back. And yet, there were quiet, stolen moments, the soft brush of a hand, a whisper near my ear, the subtle leaning closer that could have gone unnoticed by anyone else. Each one left me dizzy, breathless, craving the next and dreading the consequences. I began to live in those spaces between right and wrong, caught between the familiar warmth of my husband and the intoxicating pull of my father-in-law. And with every heartbeat, the story we were writing together became more impossible to stop. By the end of those weeks, the tension had become unbearable. Every encounter was charged with unspoken words, every touch a storm of emotion. I knew then that the pivotal moment, the moment that would change everything, was approaching, and I was powerless to prevent it. It happened on a night I can't forget. The air was thick with tension, charged in a way I couldn't shake. My husband was away again, and I was alone in the house, alone except for him. He appeared silently in the doorway, the shadows flickering across his face like a warning I couldn't read. "We need to stop," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But there was a tremor in it, an edge I hadn't noticed before. My chest tightened, and I realized how powerless I truly was to resist him. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured. My heart raced as I took a step back, but the room seemed to shrink around us. "You can't fight this," he murmured, and the intensity in his gaze made the words impossible to ignore. I wanted to speak, to tell him it was impossible, that it was wrong, but my voice betrayed me, faltering in the weight of unspoken emotion. Time seemed to slow. Every second stretched, every heartbeat thundered like a drum echoing in an empty hall. I could feel the gravity of what was happening pressing down on me. It wasn't a question of desire anymore. It was a confrontation with the impossible, a collision of longing, fear, and power. My mind screamed at me to run, to escape, but something in his presence anchored me in place, daring me to see this through. Then, a sharp knock at the door made us both freeze. My husband's voice called from the other room, cheerful, unaware. Panic flared. He gave me a glance, half warning, half reassurance, and stepped back, vanishing into the shadows of the hall. I stood there, trembling, the air thick, the silence deafening. The moment had passed, but the tension remained, hanging like smoke I couldn't clear. I realized then that nothing would ever be the same. The lines I thought existed had blurred, and the life I believed I controlled was slipping through my fingers. I had crossed a threshold, one I couldn't go back from, and the memory of his presence, the way he made me feel, the power he held over me, would haunt me long after that night. Every instinct, every thought screamed that this was dangerous, forbidden, and utterly irreversible. And yet I couldn't shake the thrill, the intoxicating pull, the knowledge that what had begun in subtle glances had grown into something far greater, far more consuming than I had ever imagined. The days after that night were surreal. I moved through the house as if in a haze, my mind replaying every glance, every touch, every word he had whispered. My husband noticed nothing, or maybe he did, and I was too afraid to see it in his eyes. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but beneath it, the tension simmered like a storm waiting to break. I found myself remembering the way he had looked at me, the intensity that had made my heart stutter. And with every memory, a thrill and a fear curled in my chest. I knew I had stepped into dangerous territory, yet I couldn't forget the power he had over me, the way he made me feel alive and trapped all at once. It was intoxicating, terrifying, and utterly consuming. Sometimes I would catch myself staring at the doorway, imagining him appearing again. I hated myself for it. I feared what it meant, and yet I couldn't deny the pull. That night had changed everything. My life, my marriage, my own sense of control, it all felt fragile, hanging by threads I wasn't sure I could hold. And then a message appeared on my phone, unsigned, simple, and chilling. "We need to talk." My breath caught. My heart raced. Was it him or someone else? The suspense made me shiver, the unknown drawing me into a tension I couldn't resist. I didn't know what would happen next, and somehow I didn't want to know. Because some doors, once opened, never close. And I realized that whatever had begun in subtle glances and forbidden tension was only the beginning of a story I wasn't sure I could control or escape. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have resisted or let the tension take over? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you want to follow the twists, turns, and shocking truths of stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. The next chapter might be closer than you think.